Week 11 has come and gone, and that means it is time to dive into your Dynasty waiver wires to see if there are players available that could either actually help you out by plugging in right into your starting lineup as we move towards the Dynasty playoffs, or by helping out the value of your roster for potential future moves and trades. So let's get right into the video. Like I say every single week, I pull actual data from real Dynasty leagues, run through safe leagues on myfantasyleague.com to help guide me for players who might actually be available in y'all's Dynasty leagues out there. So any rostership data or rostership percentages that I reference in this video are from that data set. First off, let's start with a couple players that could be on your Dynasty waiver wires. Most likely they are already rostered, but just in case, these guys should be immediately picked up onto your roster. And that includes Devonta Freeman, running back for the Baltimore Ravens, Alex Collins, running back for the Seattle Seahawks, Jeremy McNichols, running back for the Tennessee Titans, and Kendrick Bourne, the wide receiver for the New England Patriots. So let's kick things off with the first player that could be available on your waiver wire that does deserve to be picked up this week, and that is DeeJay Dallas, the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. And I know I just said that if Alex Collins is still available on your waiver wire to go and immediately pick him up with zero hesitation, DeeJay Dallas, I think, has a really good opportunity over the next handful of weeks as we close the 2021 regular season to actually make some sort of an impact in the Seattle Seahawks offense. And the reason I say that is because we know what Alex Collins is, and the Seattle Seahawks should know what Alex Collins is. Rashad Penny came back, played one snap, had one carry for 18 yards, and then immediately went back into the medical tent and only came out for one additional snap. So it's really hard for him to stay on the field. It's been proven and shown over basically his entire career that he just cannot stay on the field. So the only other running back really on that team outside of Travis Homer is DeeJay Dallas, who I think really deserves an actual shot on the Seattle Seahawks team as their 4th round pick in last year's draft. Like I said, Collins has been the next man up and has been the starter in Chris Carson's absence, but I do believe that DeeJay Dallas deserves a real shot. I mean, just in this past week, he only had 4 carries for 25 yards, but did score the only touchdown for the Seattle Seahawks. And I just think that he's younger, he has more juice, he's more of an unknown asset. So while the Seattle Seahawks are currently 3-7, not going to make the playoffs, kind of a lost season for them, why would they not just see what they have in DeeJay Dallas? Because he looks good, he looks explosive, he's got some juice. You invested a little bit of draft capital in him last year, so just see what he has over the next handful of weeks as we close the season in a lost season already. And if that actually does happen, which I think there is probably a good chance that that does happen, DeeJay Dallas should be picked up if he does actually become the starting running back for the Seattle Seahawks. And available in almost 30% of Dynasty leagues, I feel like that's a pretty solid stash for the remainder of the year if you have that extra bench space. So go ahead and pick up DeeJay Dallas just to see what you have and see what the Seattle Seahawks have in this running back. The next 2 players I want to talk about are wide receivers in very similar situations. And the first one is Rashard Higgins, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns passing game has been super weak as of late. Baker Mayfield's been injured, so that's kind of it. But, you know, after they got rid of OBJ, Jarvis Landry has been dealing with and continually re-aggravating this knee injury, so he's been in and out of games. Donovan Peoples-Jones missed this past week as well. It's just not a really good situation for Browns wide receivers. But insert Rashard Higgins, and I think that he has a really good opportunity to potentially be the team's wide receiver 1 for a couple of weeks here as we finish out 2021 over the back half of this stretch. And he actually performed pretty well in a similar role last year in a couple of games as well over weeks 13 through 15, averaging 8 targets a game, a little over 5 receptions, 80 receiving yards, and almost 1 touchdown per game in that 3-game stretch, and was very, very good for fantasy football. So I do think Rashard Higgins could be valuable for fantasy in a couple of games as we finish out the 2021 regular season, and he's available in almost 30% of Dynasty leagues, just like DeeJay Dallas. So I definitely think that he is worth a stash if you have that extra bench space, or if you just have, you know, 8 or 9 wide receivers on your team and just continuing to churn out that wide receiver back end of your core, then I think Rashard Higgins could definitely find a spot on your Dynasty team in deeper leagues and just kind of see, just like DeeJay Dallas, see what happens over the last half of the season, see if Rashard Higgins actually comes out as the wide receiver 1 on the Browns for a couple of games, because you might actually get some flex worthy starts out of him for fantasy football. The next wide receiver in a similar situation is Cedrick Wilson, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, who could see an increased role as early as Thursday on Thanksgiving because Amari Cooper tested positive for COVID-19. So because of NFL protocols, he is set to miss on Thanksgiving. And then CeeDee Lamb, just in this past week on Sunday, left the game with a concussion injury. So if he is still in concussion protocol, the Dallas Cowboys could head into their Thanksgiving game with Michael Gallup and Cedrick Wilson as their wide receivers 1 and 2, which would lead for a very increased role in both snaps, routes, and potentially targets and opportunity for Cedrick Wilson, to the point where he could actually be picked up from your waiver wire and potentially played in your starting lineup just directly from the waiver wire. And Wilson has had moments in his 3-year career of fantasy relevance. He's had 2 games so far this year with 7 targets, turning in 7 and 8 PPR fantasy points in those 2 games. He also had a game last year with 7 targets where he actually scored 27 fantasy points to the tune of 5 for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely has had some very fantasy relevant weeks. But this week, if he is the wide receiver 2 with Michael Gallup, that could be a very good opportunity for him to showcase kind of what he has, maybe get 7 or 8 targets, 4 or 5 receptions, do all that. And if he scores a touchdown, you're looking at a pretty solid fantasy performance for a wide receiver in a spot start, especially if you were the person who lost potentially Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb or maybe some other wide receivers to injury, then you have that empty roster spot. Cedrick Wilson could potentially slot in right from the waiver wire if he's available in your leagues to your starting lineup on Thursday on Thanksgiving Day. So Cedrick Wilson and Rashard Higgins, I think, are both really good players in similar situations that could see some increased snaps and role and opportunity on their own team that could be relevant for fantasy football. Lastly, I want to name a couple of names who are rostered in less than 5% of dynasty leagues out there. So if you want to treat them as just deep stashes that you have an empty roster spot and you really don't know who to pick up, maybe you could see if some of these guys are available, because chances are they probably are in over 95% of dynasty leagues. The first one is Dontrell Hilliard, running back for the Tennessee Titans. Then we have Mac Hollins, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, and Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears. So those are 3 names that if you have nobody else to pick up and you're not really sure where to go, what direction to head in just to stash somebody, look to those 3 guys and see if you can pick out any of those names, whichever one you like best, and pick them up and stash them on your roster just to see what happens. I do write a waiver wire article every single week on dynastyleaguefootball.com that drops on Monday and does include more players than what I included in this video. So if you like more players a whole day earlier and access to that article, you can sign up and become a DLF Premium subscriber. And actually, one thing that we're doing again this year that we've done every single year at DLF is a massive Black Friday sale on our yearly premium subscription. So starting on Black Friday and running through December 3rd, you can get 30% off of the DLF yearly subscription. That drops the price from $50 a year down to $34.99. So that is our best price of the year every single year, and you can re-up at that same price as well. So if you want access and have been waiting to get access to dynastyleaguefootball.com and all of the amazing articles, tools, ADP, rankings, everything that we have over at DLF, and you want access to all that stuff and you've been waiting for a really good time to do that, now is the best time, starting on Black Friday, running until December 3rd, to gain the best possible price, to gain all of that access to dynastyleaguefootball.com. And if you'd like to watch some takeaways from the Week 11 slate of NFL games, you can click right up here and watch that video. And with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all later.